this video, I'm going to show the things that I've learned from the content Epic released about rigging in Unreal. This is based on workshops they've been doing since the end of last year, and they posted all the content in their website. So I do recommend you all to watch and see what else you can learn. But what I really like from this type of videos is to get the things that people use, like the shortcuts and the little small tricks that they do while working in the reel. And this is what I'm going to show here, all these little things that I've learned from their videos. So it's not about rigging related, but it might help you in your work. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching.
Okay, so I have to say this is probably my fourth attempt of recording this. I was trying to record the camera with my face, but it's not going to work, so you guys will have to just have my voice, and that's fine. So basically, the first thing I've learned, actually I knew about this, but I never really used before. If you go to Edit, Editor Preferences, and type Gizmo, there is the Enable Experimental Gizmo here, which is, let me just switch it off. So this is the standard one, right? From a real rotation, you can only rotate on each axis. But if you enable the experimental one, it's much more intuitive, much more similar to what we have in Maya. So yeah, I'll definitely be using this a little bit more. Then the other thing was about renaming the skeleton. So if you go to the skeleton mesh, editing tools, skeleton, edit skeleton, and let's say I want to rename the neck ones. If I press F2, I enter in here, and then if I use the hashtag, I can just number the joints that I've selected. So the amount of hashtags that I used is the amount of numbers I'm getting. Also, if you didn't know and your keyboard doesn't have hashtag, if you press Alt 35, it gives you a hashtag. So yeah, that was something I also learned. Okay, so in the control rig, let me actually, I don't want to use because this is my main one. So let's duplicate this one and test. Not to break anything on that. So one thing they showed is to, and I showed this in my course actually, but they used it just to kind of clean up the graph a little bit more. So let's say I have here toes left and toes right. So instead of having everything here in this first graph view, I can just select and collapse the function. And instead of it's not about actually creating a function about it, because it's still everything hard coded here. But it's about just cleaning up. So if I put here toes and then come back here, so my graph would be much cleaner basically. Another thing about arrays, so let's say I created an array here, create item array. To get the first item, to get any item we use this at. So 0 will get the first one, 1 will get this one. But actually to get the final one, if we just type -1, that means that you get the last item in an array. Yeah, this is pretty handy to know. I didn't know about that. Another thing that is new is that you can rename the arrays. So let's say if we rename for spine, it's very handy because when you have a lot of arrays, you need to keep zooming in and reminding yourself why did you create that. So yeah, this is pretty handy. Another thing is about these shortcuts. Also, this is not new from 5.7, but it's always good to know. So basically, if you come here, let me just hide them first. If you come here in the eye, go in bones, and I personally always switch between all hierarchy and none. So if you press shift and left click, you create these icons here. So if you go again and do same for the none. So now you have these easy shortcuts here to swap. Okay, last thing in my list is the blueprints. So just to organize, you can create a category here. So let's say my category is dynamics and the feather dynamics live under it. But you can create sub-menus here. So if you type this bar thing that I don't know how it's called in English, but let's just call feather, and then compile, then you start having these drop down menus here, which can be quite handy. One thing I noticed when when you want to get from, like, I have these items here, for example, I want to replace the C to left. So I go here and I go replace items and I put C and I put left and I create another array. This sometimes can cause a little bit of an issue. It just feels like Unreal really doesn't really know what to read. So I noticed what they do is that they actually clone their array first and then use this to like produce the left side, for example. So yeah, it's just good to keep in mind. Probably is a good practice. Another things about controllers, so basically you can create an animation channel here. So if you click on this plus icon, it gives you some channels, and you can change the type of channel. I'll just keep float, and it also lives in here in the hierarchy. Will live under the control that you selected. So now if I drag and drop this to the scene, you can easily access, so animators can easily access these variables here. And another nice thing is that you can have the same variable shared between other controllers. So if you go to the construction event, and it's called set channel hosts. Yeah. So then if you grab the channel here and then adds the hosts, for example, I want to share with a cog. Press compile. So I still only have one channel here, but if I go in the rig and I go to the cog control, I have this channel, let's say it's set to 5. If I go back to the root, it's already on 5 because it's sharing the same information. And if you want to iterate with this, you can just get this animation channel and play with these values. Another thing they said is that parent constraint is overkill, so we shouldn't be using this one. Although I learned something very cool about functions. So if you select, let's say, the child and the parent here, and right click and say configure child and parent from selection, you can automatically fill up this. Apparently it worked for the IK and other functions that exist as well, so just keep an eye. Whatever the function has this configure option here. But anyway, we shouldn't be using parent constraint, we should be using project to new parent, which is a bit annoying because you need to repeat the parent twice here. So what they created is that they created the parent function, which only have the child and the parent. But basically, if you open here, the parent function is essentially just the project to new parent, repeating the same input for the old and for the new. So yeah, we should be using this if we want to just do a basic parent constraint. Another thing is that if you type standard here, you get all the standard functions that were created. So height controls, colorize. So yeah, this is pretty handy to know. So it's still here in the construction event. If we want to create a controller, there is something called control stack at item. So let's say I want to pass the cog, not the root, let's say. So if I pass the root here, it creates a root control here. And then I can change the name, can change the parent. I can also, let's just compile. I can add a null, which will create kind of an empty group on top of the controller that I just created. Then you can also create a bottleneck, a secondary control, which just, yeah, you have then two options. You can, oops. You can also orient to the word. Of course, this won't work because the root is oriented already, but yeah, it is pretty handy to have that automatically done here. And then you can also spit out each of these items from this same kind of control. Another thing about organizing the graph is that all these shortcuts that we have here with the alignment, especially the Q to straighten connections. So yeah, it's always good to keep a graph organized. I probably should do a better job on this, like double clicking and using these icons a bit more. But yeah, it's not too bad. Another thing inside functions is that if you go here now, you can just drag and drop the order of the entries. Before you had to click here and then change the order here, but now you can do it straight here. So they said there would be a new thing called remove no used functions or something like that, but I can't. You would like right clicking here and you would delete like no used functions automatically, but I can't find it. And the last one, but for me I think is the most important, is if you want to debug control rig before, you used to have to kind of, I would end up creating sequences here and basically disconnecting things from the sequence so I could see what was working and etc. But now every kind of main node has this little icon here, and then if you click, it just posts everything that comes after that. So here this cog is still working, but then if I go to the head, for example, that's not working. And if I check this again, then the head is back on working. So I think this is very, very useful for us to debug. And that's it. Hopefully this video is recorded all fine. And thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.